Hello, I am Pam and this is my channel Made by Pam. So I am making dresses. So I'm working on Simplicity 3514 and I am doing view A. Kinda sorta. So I've done it with the sleeve and I've done one without the sleeve. And then I could even add the little flounce if I wanted. So let me show you the version that I have done with the sleeve. One with the sleeve, and I've just used a brown fabric and cut it into a bias and put it around the neckline and the sleeves. And here is the bottom. I've done the binding on the bottom, and then it's got the pockets. Well, this is the first dress that I've done, and then this is the one that I've done without the sleeves, and I've just done the binding, the bias binding around the edges, and then also on the bottom. And I've made it so that there's no raw edges anywhere. So even on the sleeved one, there is no raw edges. So I've done French seams on the whole thing. Well, there's no raw edges anywhere. So I decided that maybe I want to try to make it and show you like a sew along type thing. I don't know, but I'm doing view A. But this one that I'm working on now, I'm not putting sleeves on, so it's just going to have the bias that's going to go around the neck. I mean, around the armhole like the blue one. Okay. So here are the pockets. And I have already ironed and stitched it down, and then I have that pinned down. And you don't have to worry about finishing off these edges per se, because they're just going to be included into the seam. And then I have my little notch. And so here is the front center. And this one we're just going to need to do a gather stitch. So I put my seam length all the way up to 5. That's the highest this one goes. I thought I marked it, but I think I forgot to do my clip. I think I forgot to clip my notches. Oops. Put that back down on there. I'll clip my notches really quick. Okay. And these are just my pattern pieces. I have traced it out. And the size that I am making is an 8.5. It's a plus size pattern for little girls. So 8.5, and the little girls, it's a plus size. So for a regular 8, like for the chest size would be 27. Well, an 8.5, the chest size is a 30, and the waist is a 28, as to where the regular 8 is a 23. The hips go up to 33 on the 8.5, as to where the hips on the size 8 is a 28. Well, let me just go ahead and give you a quick view of that sizing. And I've thought about making the 16.5 too, but I don't know. I'm just gonna stick to the 8.5 for now, you know, for the time being. Well, this is the front center, so let's get back on track here. Well, this one I was going to do the gather stitch. I just start out at that little notch. And sometimes it says to do 2 rows of stitching, but on this one I find it's not necessary, and I do a back stitch right there at the end, and then when I pull it, I just pull it from one of these strings to gather it. So we'll set that one aside. That one is prepped. And then this one is the back piece, and it looks like I forgot to cut my notches on this too. Silly me. Okay, that's the front piece, that's the back piece. So sorry. I thought I had it. Nope. This one is this side front. This is this piece. Oh, I did mark my notches on this one. Okay, so here is the back piece here. Okay, I did mark it. Oh, good. Let's go ahead and set my pattern pieces aside. And this one we also do, it does say to do a stay stitching, but I don't find that so necessary. So I am just going to go ahead and do my gathering stitch. Got my gathering stitch because the back of it is gathered. We'll set that piece aside. Okay, so here is the front side pieces. So like the little panels right here where the pockets are, that's what we're working on now. And I just basically find my notch that I did. So here is the notch right here. And so I take my pocket piece and I find the right one. And here it is right here because the notch is right there. And I just go ahead and I line those notches up. And I'm going to go ahead and pin this piece. I'll just kind of set it where it needs to be, and then I do double check with my pattern piece and I make sure that it does kind of line up with where it needs to be, because I want to make sure that I have that pocket placement approximately where it should be. Like if I had left that where I'd set it, it would be way off. So now I have it set where it needs to be. And then I'm just going to sew along this bottom edge here. I'm going to reset those pins on the fabric. And then I will just stitch it. And actually I need it at that position. Then I'm just going to go ahead and go back over it one more time just to reinforce that stitching. Okay. And then we have that all sewn together. And it's probably better if I use a thread you could see better. But I am making this for somebody, so I'm going to use the white thread. And then we're just going to sew along this pocket edge to sew it down. And I usually stitch it closer to the edge. Because I don't want to have to adjust my seams later if that is going to show. So I want to make sure that I stitch it so that it won't show in the next step. Okay, so the first pocket is sewn. Then we're going to go ahead and sew on the second pocket, same as we did with the first. This time this notch is on that side. Go ahead and line that up and pin it down. Go ahead and line that edge up. And then I will take my piece again and I will set it down on the my pattern on the fabric, and I will double check where that pocket needs to be placed because I have the pocket line marked. I've got that set up. Okay, and then I'm just going to go ahead in here and I'm just going to go ahead and stitch it up. Oh yeah, I was gonna back it. Alright, do a second row of stitching. Okay. And see that I just have the folded over edge here, and so there is no raw edge. Then I'm going to go ahead and take this and stitch it up the sides, just like I did before. Okay, I'll go ahead and go to this other side. and line it up. Okay, stitching is all done on the pockets. Now we will take the front center and we are going to stitch that together. And according to the instructions, you want to make sure that sometimes it's hard to tell, but where your notched edge is from the pocket, that goes on the outside. And so you would take your other pieces and you would line them up. And remember, I am doing French seams, so I am sewing wrong sides together to begin with. Kind of sew it along so it lines up with the presser foot. Okay, got this seam sewn together, and then we're going to do that to the other side also. Go ahead and sew the wrong sides together. And yeah, I'm not pinning it together. I'm just pulling it together as I sew. Okay. Got that sewn together. Now the next step that I do is I take and I trim these seams. I just take my pinking blade rotary cutter, so it's got a little wave on it, and I just take and I pink these edges. I'll pink this other edge. And then these edges are pinked off. And then I take it over to my ironing board. And I will iron it. So first step is I'm going to set the seams, iron it down. Set that seam, and I fold it out this way, and then the way the pocket goes, I make sure that I'm ironing it away from the pocket. Like my first one I made, I tried ironing it differently. I didn't iron the top first, and I just try to kind of fold it. And after doing it this way, it made such a better result that I iron the top and iron that seam, and then I fold it over. And iron this top part of the seam. And it just seems to line up and match so much better doing it this way. Okay, I've got that seam ironed, and now I will do this other seam here, right here.
And then we'll just go ahead and fold it over after ironing that.
Got that ironed down. Now we'll take you back over to the sewing machine. So we have that ironed, and now we're going to go ahead and stitch down these seams. And I still keep it in my middle needle position. And I still just line it up against that presser foot. And we just sew. And we make sure we back stitch, lock in that seam. I'll come over here and sew down this seam. Same way. Clip nice threads. Okay. So we have this all sewn together. Now, the next part, you see that the seams are all sewn together and there's no raw seams. So the next part that we are going to do is sew on the neck piece. And I have my piece right here. I already have my notches cut. So this one I do, and I make sure that it says to cut out one piece, but since I am hiding the seams, I cut out 2 pieces. So first I set the first on this side, right sides together. I go ahead and I line up those notches first. So I take and I line it up. Make sure you can give you a closer up. I line up those notches. I just kind of pin down that seam too, because with this we're going to be having the seams go towards the front, and then come out here and I line up this edge. Which, the way they have you doing it, I don't know why they have, you know, it going like that, but they do. So I just kind of, you know, bypass it a little bit. It's kind of pointless, really. And with this, I just kind of stretch it as I go a little bit to assure that it lines up, because it is going on a curve. Just kind of ease it in there. Just make sure it all lines up. Okay. Alright. Use my fingers to hold it where it needs to go as I'm slightly stretching it. Make sure that it lines up. And then with this middle piece here where I have my gathering strings, I just find one of them and I just pull it and gather it until it is where it needs to be. I just kind of even out the gathers, line it up. That's all good. And then I pin it and I'm going. Okay, I've got that pinned. Now where this piece comes in handy is I'm just going to take it and I'm going to put right side to wrong side on the opposite side. And since I already did all the stretching on the other thing, it's going to be less hassle on this piece. I still need to make sure that I keep my notches lined up. Go ahead and go through and make sure all of that's lined up. Go ahead and line these pieces up. Okay, let's finish this other side. Alright, so I have it all lined up, all pinned, both sides. And then I take it back over to my machine. I'm going to switch it back over to the left position needle. And do a 3/8 inch seam allowance on this. So basically I'm just putting it right along my foot there. Move pins. Okay. So now we have that all sewn together. Now I'm just going to take it over to my iron and I'm just going to iron this top part. So we brought you over to the ironing board and we're just going to go ahead and what I should do is set those seams first and go ahead and switch this back out around. Because it does make it sit much better setting those. Okay. Now we'll flip it out. And I guess if I'd wanted to, I could have done like a pleat. Might make that neck edge look a little nicer. Okay. Since we have that, we're just gonna go ahead and we're over here and we're just gonna do a quick iron down of this front seam. We're just ironing it down towards the center of the dress. I'm using a steam iron that just produces steam and it doesn't shut off. Okay. Alright, so next what we're going to do is we're going to just take and we're just going to top stitch along this edge. Just like I've done on the other pieces here. Basically, I'm just going to line up the edge right along the edge of that. Okay. So I have my top stitching done. There is a back view, and see, no raw edges on that back. Now we take our strap pieces. So this is called, let's see, did I write down what the name of it was on my other piece? I don't know. Let me just go ahead and tell you what it's called in the instructions. That one, number 5, is called the yoke side front. And this one says to only cut out 2. Well, I cut out 4 because we're doing no raw edges. So I have 2 and 2. On this one, I still have to kind of think about it and remember how to set it up. Because this piece, I do tend to forget the exacts. I do have to look at it every time still, just to make sure I get the placement correct. You see, here's the instructions. So I like to just double check and make sure that I'm getting the way it's going correct on there. I'm making sure that this little edge here is facing the right way. So it's showing back view, not showing that placing in. So basically take this, line it up there. And it lines up with the notches there. Okay. And this other piece, I'll place it same way, the opposite side. So it's just sandwiching in the other piece of fabric. Then I do that to the other side also. Yep, I still have to look at the instructions and make sure I get it centered right. Little strap piece still kind of throws me off a little bit. Okay, and then go ahead and line up this other piece here. And then we're just going to go ahead and take the machine and we're going to stitch it. And that says we have a 5/8 inch seam allowance. And I'm just going to go ahead and continue on and just jump it over to the other section here. We've got that all stitched up here. And so let's go ahead and take it back over to the ironing board and iron it together. Set that seam. Iron down this seam. Okay, so we have that sewn together and no raw edges. Okay, so now we are going to take our back piece here and we are going to attach it to this piece. So we have these pieces and we're going to attach it to that. And we want to make sure that we have no raw edges. So we're going to take this piece, it's from the top. Just going to go ahead and put like this back side there. Go ahead and line those up. Go ahead and pin it down here. And then we'll do that to this other side here. So we have this piece and we have this piece. We'll take this piece first and we'll line it up right there. And it's just going to hide all of those raw edges. And then for this piece, it needs to be put on like that. So kind of twist it here. So we're going to put right sides together and take that and repin it as we go. And then I do like to take an extra pin here and pin along that, just kind of keep the extra pieces out of the way. And I'll also do the same to this one. And twist that. And then I'll put pins through, make sure it stays where it needs to be. And then this one does also allow a 5/8 inch seam allowance. If you have that all pinned together, sewn together here. Alright, and then we just flip it out. And then see this side? Just flip it. And see? No raw edge. I'm just going to do a quick press. We have that. Now the next step is to attach the neck binding. So first what we're going to do is we're going to take and we are going to press down like a quarter of, let's see, how much did it say to press down the neck band? So 3/8 of an inch along the edge. So I'm going to go ahead and we're going to go ahead and go over to this ironing board. and we're going to press down the 3/8 inch, and then we're going to bring it over and stitch it and pin it to the neck. So it says 3/8 inch on the unnotched edge. And I have an ironing ruler, which of course it doesn't tell you 3/8 inch. But the 3/8 inch is basically that line just in between the 1/4 inch and the 1/2 inch. You just basically count up 3 because there's 8 marks. So you just go 1, 2, 3, and that's 3/8 inch. So I have this all ironed, just 3/8 inch, and then we are going to take it and we are going to go ahead and stitch up the back. On back it says 5/8 inch. Because it says there's 5/8 inch unless it's otherwise marked or indicated. So mark that. And then we will take it over here and we will pin it right sides together. Go ahead and take it and I will just do a little chalk mark in the center of that seam. And then I will take and I will line this up really quick. Just like that. And I will do a quick chalk mark. Oops. That didn't quite work like I wanted it to. Let's just do a friction pen. There we go. We got a little friction pen marking right there. And then we'll try this again. Put right sides together, match up the notches. Okay, and then go ahead and line that up on the front. And as we go, we just do a little bit of stretching just to ease it in. That's why you cut it on the bias. I kind of pull it a little bit, line it up, hold it with my fingers, and then pull it a little bit, line it up, hold it with my fingers, and pin it. Okay. Let me work on this other side here. Okay, and then on this back part here, we just have our little pull string, and we just pull it and gather in that stitching. Just kind of even it out. All matched up. Go ahead and put a couple pins in it to keep it in place. And then we're going to go through and we're just going to stitch down 3/8 of an inch on the neck binding. I'll make sure that I have my pins set over so I can load it on. Okay. Okay, so I have this all sewn. Now next step is I'm going to take and I am going to trim the seam. And I just basically take my pinking shear rotary cutter blade and I just go along and cut it. I could just use my scissors, but I like doing it this way too. all trimmed, and then we're going to take it back over to the iron, and we are going to press these seams and press this seam going upwards towards the binding, and then we are going to go back over and fold this and do a small hem. So we have the ironing done. Now we're just going to take, and we are just going to go through and pin to make sure that it stays in place so we can stitch it. And I just kind of pin in the ditch, like just right along the edge, and that usually catches the other side. I'll just basically double check on the back side of each of these and make sure I've caught the fabric on the opposite side. And if I don't, I just reposition it a little bit. Now, the next step, since we have that all pinned, is we're going to take it back over to the machine and we are going to stitch it down. And I don't stitch in the ditch with this one. I think it looks nicer with the thread actually showing along the edge. And it's just easier not to have to stitch it in the ditch. And I usually try to start out at the back edge of the seam. I'll remove a piece. And I'll just kind of line it up and try to keep my stitches where they need to be along the back binding. There are lots of stops and goes. Just trim all my loose threads right there. Okay. So now we have the neck binding sewn up, no raw edges. Next step would be to sew the side seams. So I move my needle back into the center position since we're doing French seams. And I just go ahead and line that up. And this I don't worry about pinning, I just line it up as I sew. Okay, so I have that side seam sewn up. Now I'll go ahead and sew up this other side seam. Alright, we got those side seams sewn up. Now we're going to go ahead and take the pinking shear again, and we are just going to trim that seam. Okay, and then I'm going to take over and iron this, and then I'll be back. Okay, so I have my seams ironed, and I still have my needle in the middle position. Okay. And iron this one. Go ahead and sew this one down. I've already ironed it. Okay. Well, that is done. No raw edge. Now, time for the binding around the armhole. So I have the binding here. I've already ironed it. I just did like the bias something, and basically line it up there, and then when I get around I will trim it and sew it and then sew it. Does that make sense? Right sides together. Get that out of the way there. I'm going to take my marking pen here. Line that up there. Work those up. Then I'll take and line this up. So undo a couple of pins so I have space. I'll go ahead and line this up. Okay. Stitch this up. And I still have my needle in the middle position, so I can just follow right along that line. Okay. Looks like it will line right up where it needs to. So I'm just going to go ahead and cut off the excess. And then I'll line that right back up. There we go. And then I will take and just stitch this up. Alright, so we have it all pinned up, and I'm just going to go ahead and start right along that bottom seam. Basically did a 3/8 inch seam allowance. We just catch it like right in there so that this seam doesn't show. And then we'll take and we will trim that off, but let's go ahead over here and do this other side. Go ahead and go through and pin this all together.
All the way over there. Save myself some trouble.
I just marked where my seam line is. Mark that. And I can take the two, stitch them together. I'll put it back in the center position. And double check and make sure it all lines up, which it does. So I will take and trim off the excess. And then we'll continue to pin this together. So now put that back. Go ahead, start at the seam. I just double check and I make sure that I caught that little piece in there. Alright, now what I'm going to do is I am going to go ahead and trim the seam. So I got my scissors here on the arm, around the armhole. I do like to just use the scissors. All trimmed. Now time for the other side. Okay. Now, take it over to the iron and iron it, and then pin it. So I went ahead and I ironed all of this, and then I have pinned it down. Then I'm just going to go ahead and go along and top stitch it. Fast forward. Have that one all sewn together. Now time for this other side. Let's trim off my threads. Okay, so now we have neckline all sewn up, this sleeve, the armhole all sewn up, no raw edges anywhere. And then just the bottom is all we have left to do. So I already have another piece prepared. And I'll just go ahead and kind of set that down, line it up. Actually, I'll leave plenty of space, but this one I'm not going to like pin it all the way around. I'll just go ahead and stitch it as we go. And I'm just kind of hoping that I have a long enough piece. And end it right here. We'll do our markings. Okay, have my markings. Go ahead and line those markings up. Okay. In the center needle position. Make sure that it will reach all the way around. Yep, perfect. And then I will cut off my excess. And see, I still had this much left along with that. Okay. Put this back under. And then we need to do our trimming of the seam. Well, that is all sewn on. Okay, I have that all trimmed. Now I'm gonna go and iron that and iron it down and pin it, and then I'll come back. Okay, so I've gone ahead and ironed and pinned the whole bottom piece. And then go ahead and start on there. Okay, so the dress is finished. No raw seams. They're all enclosed. Did a French hem, French seam all the way on every seam, and then used a bias binding on the edges. So it is all finished. And this was Simplicity 3514 View A, but without the sleeves. Alright, well, I hope you guys all enjoyed that. If you have any questions, go ahead and leave them in the comment section. And I hope you all have a wonderful day. Thank you for watching. Bye. We just start right there on the back, and we line up the notches. So we got the notch there. We'll just go ahead and line it up. Pull that, line up that notch, so we'll have all this extra that will be gathered. I was supposed to have marked my seam. Gotta get my piece. This one right here. I forgot to mark my center. Let's go ahead and unfold that. Let's go ahead and take that from there, which I could have just taken it and marked it that way. Seems a little bit longer.